My name is Tess Gerard, and I began working in the film industry in 2005, so almost 15 years. I was first inspired to be a cinematographer because I was introduced to the visual arts at a young age. My mother was a painter, and I loved photography, and the moving image was something that I was always attracted to. And then when I saw a film called Picture of Light by filmmaker Peter Mettler, I was really inspired by how an image can take the viewer on a journey and means so much more than what you're actually seeing. So I'm interested in images that are poetry and can take the viewer on a journey. I started my filmmaking career in a very unconventional path. I was a student at York University, and my student film played TIFF, and it launched my directing career, which is strange because I wanted to be a cinematographer. And so I actually started my path by shooting my own films and eventually shooting for other people. But I also found that there wasn't a lot of female mentorship out there for me, and when I did work in the camera departments, it wasn't very encouraging to me. So I eventually created my own path by shooting my own films, starting my own production company, and creating my own projects to shoot. By doing that, I had this roster of work that eventually allowed me to be a director of photography through the path that I carved myself. The more I'm in this industry, the more I find that that is how a lot of women are doing their careers. They found that the platform didn't exist for them to do what they wanted to do in the way that they wanted to do it. So they carved their own path. And when I'm on panels, I start telling this story, and then other women chime in and they tell this story as well. So I find it's a very common thing. I'm very hands-on, and I think that's really what attracted me to camera, because it's like it encompasses every little interest that I have into one little machine. I try to look at the image from a 360-degree perspective. So how is it edited into your project? How is it going to coincide with your music? How is it going to go along with your themes? And what poetry can we bring out? What are the metaphors within the image that you can bring out that go along with your character's path or your documentary subject's path? My background as a filmmaker itself always brings that to the table, and how I can bring your image out into something that more is than is just more than documenting what's happening in front. Often in the film industry, and especially as a woman, it's really hard to admit what your biggest struggles are. And lately I've actually noticed that one of my biggest struggles is a little voice in the back of my head that says, you can't do it. There's something inside of me that I'm constantly fighting, that's very deep in the background, that is not how I was raised, it's not the people around me, it's society has been telling me for a very long time. And I'm starting to realize what it is now, that every message that we've been given growing up is that you shouldn't be doing this, you can't do this, and it's because you're a woman. And in those moments, I'm lucky that I have done other achievements in male-dominated industries. I have my private pilot's license, so in those moments I say, you can fly a plane, you can do this. From an early age, we're always sent the message not to pursue anything technological. We're often told that it's not for us. I love technology. I love gadgets. I love tools. I love creating something with different pieces of equipment and what an element can bring to a project. The other thing that stops women from pursuing it is that they don't see a model of how they can do it or people who can set an example for them. And if that example doesn't exist, it's hard to picture yourself in that role. So for me, not having any female mentors, that was a big struggle of just pushing forward despite not seeing any models of people that represented what I wanted to be. And lately I have had those, and some of those people are in male cinematographers as well. But it was a longer struggle to find those role models and to see the path that I wanted to carve out for myself. And it's only through my own research that I've found mentors, or I've found women who exist in other industries in other cities, that I can look at their life paths and see that that's something that I really want to achieve. I think having children makes it challenging for any cinematographer, male or female, but I feel there are less supports and more expectations on the female cinematographers for what they have to provide to a family. The most common advice that I get from other women is to not have children. And that's heartbreaking for a career, especially because I would one day love them. That it's either career or children, or that if you have children, you will have regrets for giving up your career. And it's really alarming that that is the advice that I'm being given, especially in my mid-30s. Through my own research, I have found women who have had careers with children and who have created a beautiful work-life balance, but it may not be the model that you've ever seen before. So you can have a career and you can have children, but it just may not be anything you've ever pictured before, something that somebody else has done before. We're given this image of women and family and how that should look. And it doesn't have to look that way. You can move things around. Your priorities can change. You can pick different projects. And you might find actually that you have a more beautiful career and a more beautiful family because you're treating it that way. When I first started my career, I would pursue opportunities, and then I was often put in a place where I was not asking to be. So I would ask to work on set and I would be put in the office. And that, I'm looking back, is actually an inherent form of sexism, of being put in the place where you were traditionally supposed to be. And so in that message, I was told, not only this is where you're supposed to be, this is what you're good at. And so it took me a while to pursue camera because I kept being put back in the office. So my advice to anyone pursuing what they want to do, if it's cinematography, just do it. Just, if somebody puts you in a place that you don't want to be, go to the next person, because there are so many people out there who want hard-working assistants, who want to show people, who want to mentor, who want to give back to the next generation, that you will eventually find that person. Being a cinematographer is one of those jobs where it consumes your entire life, and I do not see a difference between my life and my job. It is all part of that project. I'm an incredibly hard-working person, and I work on projects that I'm only absolutely in love with, so it means I give myself to that project, and I try to see that project and embody that project and speak the language of that project whenever I'm immersed in it. So I think I bring to the table a really great sense of work ethic. If it's not fun, it's not worth doing. So I try to keep a great rapport with my crew and just make sure it's this beautiful experience where you're creating what you want to create in this protected bubble of creativity. I feel that every film, every project that you work on should be an aha moment. You should be learning something every project, because that's why we're doing this. We're doing things to put ourselves in challenging situations where we're learning, we're using new equipment, and if you're not doing it, then it becomes stagnant and you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And you should be challenging yourself so that you can create new images, you can create new ways of working with people, and the technology is constantly changing too, so you're always going to have to catch up with that. And it should be something where you're learning, and that's what makes it exciting. I've had so many highlights in my career that I can't whittle them down to a single experience. I filmed in Cairo during the Arab Spring. I flew in an airplane 7,000 feet above the ground, filming out the pilot's seat with the door off. I've done quite adventurous things. I've been in Cape Dorset, Nunavut, hiding in a tent from a polar bear. It's all these amazing experiences. There hasn't been one highlight that sticks out. There also hasn't been a life-affirming thing that has been industry affirming, I think, because I've created that unconventional path. But it will come in time, I know it, and because the reason I'm in this is not for recognition, it's because I love doing it. I had a moment in Zimbabwe where I was filming, and the family that I was filming with suddenly broke out in song and dance, and they were playing in biras, and I was roving the camera around and filming this beautiful moment between this family and this reunion of family members and children playing along, and suddenly I heard this incredible scream, and I slowly wandered the camera over to wherever that scream was coming from, and it was a goat being slaughtered right next to the family dancing. And it was this beautiful moment of death and gift of food and this animal being sacrificed for our meal that day. And I watched them prepare the meal, and that night we ate the goat. And I think that's actually one of the highlights of my career, is witnessing a completely different way of life and being offered something that was sacrificed on my behalf. I feel like cinematographers' roles have changed because the technology has changed. Filmmaking is so much more democratic in terms of access. So we can work with so many different people and demographics now. So our role has changed in that we don't have to make it by working on big, giant union projects. I can exist by choosing to work on these little projects that I love. They're not little, they're like lower budget projects, indie projects, because the technology is not as expensive anymore. You're able to do stunning images on the simplest of cameras. And so your role has changed in that there are so many different paths to take now, and you can create your own kind of industry as opposed to following a specific path. I would love to see more mentorship for women and people of color and people who don't have a chance, and especially mentorship from people within those demographics. So it means you're building the industry from the top and the bottom at the same time, and you're creating these paths for people who don't have the models in front of them to give them a great example. And it would really change our industry to have more of these people, because it doesn't take away from anyone. It just creates more industry, it creates more projects, it creates different things, and we create a scenario where a rising tide floats all boats. So most of the projects that I've worked on right now have been more independent films, and I would love to continue working on those projects in feature films, documentary, and fiction. But I think I would love to work on a series, because you can really embed yourself in something in a longer term and really have it become part of your life. And if it's a recurring series, then it comes back to you every year, and it's this thing that you grow with. So I would love to pursue that. I'd really love to work with Reed Morano. She's a really incredible cinematographer. She's also a director, and her attention to the image is just so nuanced and beautiful. And she's been a model for me because she's been able to have a work-life balance of having kids. There's these amazing photos all over the internet of her holding an Alexa on a camera rig while she's pregnant. And I think it would be an amazing opportunity to work with her, because she's someone I've admired from afar. We currently work in a world of shrinking budgets, and it means that our equipment is less expensive, but it also means oftentimes we're not given assistance, and we have micro crews. And when there isn't a budget for a crew, that creates an opportunity for mentorship, where you can have an assistant who wants to boost up their credits and get more experience. And so when I talk about the idea of having more mentors in the industry, it is a great opportunity for crews to be open to having those people on set, to give them experience, to take them on adventures, to have give them something to put on their reel so that they can move on and move up in the industry. We're never going to get more women in the industry unless we give them a boost, and we're never going to get more people of color, Indigenous people in the industry unless we create those safe platforms for them to be where they can learn. When women hear that little voice that forces them to be not as confident as they wish they were, just remember that that's not you, that's not anyone around you telling you, that's society for many years having instilled that in you, and just tell it to go away. You can do this, you got this.